Hi, and welcome to Rochester High School. We can't wait for your child to meet us and fully become a Falcon. My name is Jennifer Ochoa-Seca, and I have the caseload of last names of A to BQ.
Hi, I'm Melissa Kinney. I have the caseload with last names that begin with BR through DA.
Hello, I'm Aaliyah Kagans, and I have students with last name DB through H. Welcome.
Welcome to Rochester. My name is Christopher Green, and I have students with the last names I through MON.
Hi there, my name is Diana Sorrentino, and I have students with last names MOO through SE. And we also have Mrs. Kelly Messing Marabito, and she has students with last names SF through Z.
Again, welcome 8th grade parents. We are going to talk about your scheduling for your 9th grade student now. You've met all of our counselors, but here again is that alpha list in case you want to revisit who your child's counselor is. What we'll be covering today are the graduation requirements for your students throughout their 4 years here at Rochester. Those will be included as we run through the set of courses. We're going to show you the areas of the scheduling card your student will be filling out, as well as maybe some things that you and your child should be considering as you're doing your scheduling, not just for 9th grade, but moving forward. Your child will also be inputting their classes into their student view, so we'll briefly cover that towards the end. The first things that you want to do with your child is get together with the scheduling materials. That's going to be their blue scheduling card, as well as the instructions. The list of course offerings for 9th grade are printed on the back of the card, and those are the only course offerings for 9th grade. We have some tutorials, informational videos on our school website, which we'll highlight towards the end of our presentation. We want to make sure students are creating a quality schedule for themselves each and every year here at Rochester. These selections should be personal to their interest. They're going to, as I said, be inputting those requests into their student view. We ask that when possible that the students, once they've completed that, create a printout of that, could be a screenshot of that, and they include that with their card when they turn it into their 8th grade counselor. There's a lot of different ways to find information about the classes, the electives. One of those could be using the course description book that the district provides, as well as our Rochester High teachers have created a course fair. All of the links to that information will be located on our Rochester website in the 9th grade Future Falcon area. All counselors will be able to answer questions. We're going to be sending some counselors over during the lunch period, during the week of our 8th grade welcome. And then the following week, counselors will go to the middle school to collect those scheduling cards and review them with students if need be. This will be another opportunity for students to ask their counselor questions. Our school website, or our counseling school website, these are a couple of clips of what that looks like. You can see below on that bottom clip is our Future Falcons area, and that's where you will find all of the scheduling materials that you can use to help your student create their scheduling card. Our graduation requirements briefly are 4 credits of English, 4 credits of math, 3 credits of social studies, 3 credits of science, and 2 credits of world language. These are our core academic areas. Each class, when I say a credit, each full year core class is going to be worth 1/2 credit. We also have additional graduation requirements in the health and physical education area, as well as our visual, performing, and applied arts. So to get us started, make sure that you have all of your scheduling materials out as you're watching this video. Feel free to bring over your student so they can go through it with you. And our counselors are going to help you understand all of the different areas of scheduling. Mrs. Kagans?
Thank you, Mr. Green. So we're going to actually get started with completing the card. We highly recommend that you use a pencil to complete the card because sometimes there's changes that may be made when you initially start this work with your schedule for next year. So we're going to start in that box A of your scheduling card and choose the English class for your student for next year. So LA 9 is going to be a requirement for every ninth grader entering the building. For some students that are passionate about English and writing, those students might actually consider taking the honors LA 9 class. There is going to be most likely some summer reading required for that particular class. But what will happen is our district English consultant will be visiting the middle schools and give your students some additional information if they are considering that honors LA 9 class. Otherwise, your student is going to choose the regular language arts 9 class and make sure that you're choosing both semesters for English for that particular year. Moving on to the science section in box A, students are required to take a full year of physical science, so every student should be checking those 2 boxes. If your student has a strong interest in science, excuse me, and is potentially pursuing a health-related career field after graduation, then your student might be considering taking physical science in addition to biology during their freshman year. Taking the 2 science classes will provide the opportunity for your students to take higher level science classes once they get into the junior and senior year. So if your student already knows that they want to take anatomy and physiology and classes like AP Bio because they do have a strong interest in science and potentially a science-related career field, then you may want to consider taking that biology class in addition to physical science. The biology class will end up taking up one of the elective spots. So you're going to add that to box C on the scheduling card if your student is considering taking biology. Another thing to keep in mind with that science class, if your student is considering taking both physical science and biology, it's highly recommended that your student is currently in Algebra 1 because some of those higher level classes does require a lot of math to be successful in those classes. So just something to consider if you're considering taking both physical science and biology in the freshman year. Moving on to math. Math is actually very individual. So the first thing that we're going to ask is that your student put in their current level math class on that line that's just below that math header. If your student is taking pre-algebra or algebra 1 or even geometry, we want to have that information in that section for the math class. But then after that, your student is just going to select the next math class in the section. So if your student is taking pre-algebra, they're going to move on to algebra 1. If your student is currently in algebra 1, they're going to move on to geometry. If your student is currently in algebra 1 and doing well, and by doing well, we mean on their assessments, so their tests and quizzes, they're most likely earning A's on those assessments because once the student gets to high school, the majority of their grade will be calculated using those tests and quiz grades. So it's going to be important that the student has that foundation while they're in that Algebra 1 class now. If your student is currently taking geometry, they're going to move on to Algebra 2 or the Honors Algebra 2. It's going to be important that regardless, your student is having a conversation with their current math teacher to get that recommendation for their next level math class. So we are going to ask for that their teacher's initial just next to the class that they decide to take for next year, and then to check both semesters for their next level math class. So this is the sequence that students are going to progress through while they're in high school. Most ninth graders start with Algebra 1, and then they move on to geometry in 10th grade. In 11th grade, they'll take Algebra 2 or Honors Algebra 2. And then in 12th grade, most students will move on to pre-calculus or take some other math-related courses. Moving on to social studies, we're going to move on to box B on the schedule card. So students are required to take a full year of world history. However, students have the option between regular world history and big history. So the big history course actually combines a lot of science into the history of the world. It actually starts with the Big Bang Theory, and it kind of goes through history looking at some of the different science discoveries that has happened over time. We are going to add an informational video to the student's Google Classroom if your student has questions about the differences between the Big History class and the World History class. The Big History class actually has a lot of videos that the students watch. There are a fair number of projects that the students are going to complete. There's a lot of writing involved, but there actually aren't any tests. So your student has to sort of know their strengths and weaknesses. If they're a good writer or even want to improve those writing skills, then the Big History class might be a good option for the students. But again, we're going to include that video in the students' Google Classroom to give you some additional information about the Big History class. Moving on to the world language requirement. So 2 years of the same world language is the graduation requirement. We understand that a lot of your students may currently be in that second year of the world language, so they may be completing the graduation requirement currently. However, if your student is doing well in the class and enjoying that language, we are going to recommend that they may continue on to a third year. But if your student is currently taking the first year or has not started the world language requirement, we are going to recommend that they start that when they get into 9th grade. And there is a flex option depending on the student's situation where they could possibly flex out of the second year of that world language. For those elective classes, students are going to look on the back of their scheduling card for those elective options. And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Sorrentino so she can give you some more information about that.
Thank you, Mrs. Kagan. Hello, everybody. Yep, we made it through the core classes and we've gotten to the elective section. So that's box C on your scheduling card. And if you flip over the scheduling card and you can see that all the course options available to freshmen are on the back so they can see the course selections. What I like is it's grouped by department. And you can also see the course number, the name of the course, and then in parentheses, you can see the number of semesters that course length is. And then there's some other good information that's helpful for picking classes. So a couple of key points. I like to explain it like this when we're talking about how many spaces, how many spots you have total in your schedule. So I always explain it, you have 6 classes first semester and 6 classes second semester. And that's where I get the number 12 total spaces. Okay, so when you think about it, every freshman is going to definitely be taking an English, a math, a social studies, and a science. So we know those classes are required and we know that they go all year. So basically 4 out of 6 spaces are already filled up for the entire year. And that leaves us 2 spaces in each semester. And that's where it says your elective should total 4 semesters. That's where we get that number. Now, if you're a student who is taking a world language, then we know we're adding a 5th core class. And so you'll have 5 out of 6 spots filled up each semester. And that only leaves you 2 spaces each semester to kind of play with and plug in other things that you might be interested. Couple of other notes to consider. If your child is applying for student government or student council, we call it at Rochester student government, STUGO. We don't want you to add that because it's not a self-select course. Students have to run for that. And the information of how to be considered for the class will be coming out soon. But what we would rather have you do is place in 2 other semester electives and put a star next to them. And then after elections, if you're added to student government, we will remove those electives and put student government in for you. Another key thing to think about is doing your research with these electives. You're coming to high school and there's more choices than you've ever had. So we really want to encourage to look at the course description book, which has the description. It also has if there's any prereqs or suggestions or things to consider. And also we have a course fair. Both things are available online at our website where you can get descriptions from the teachers about some of these electives. And I think that's just very helpful when you're trying to choose. Also, consider taking classes that hit graduation requirements like the PE, so health and physical education, or the visual performing applied arts credits. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. make sure, this is the key thing too, making sure you have a balanced schedule, and it's hard to understand that always or know or see into the future to know what that looks like. But I always encourage kids to think about how much homework they might have after school and also what kind of other activities they do outside of the school day, and looking at that time management piece so they stay on track. All right, so let's move on and let's talk about physical education. So every student needs to take one full credit. And here's the breakdowns. Basically, everyone has to take one semester or a half credit of a PE activity course. And we have those listed on the back of the card. And then one class or one semester, a 0.5 credit of a health class. You put those two together and that equals the 1.0 PE and health requirement for graduation. You have all of high school to complete this. The other option is the flex. So basically, and you may have heard of this before, but if a student participates in 2 seasons of an RCS approved Michigan High School Athletic Association sport, 2 seasons, or 2 seasons of marching band, it actually can equal a 0.5 PE credit. So we actually have a flex form to prove that you did these sports. Not that we don't believe you, but we have to have the proof. It's kind of a formality. And then we have it available online and in the counseling office. Now, if you go the route of using 2 seasons of a sport or 2 seasons of marching band as your PE, it's important to remember, you still do have to take a health class to complete the full 1.0 requirement. Another thing to consider is lifeguard training. You can earn your Red Cross card for a PE credit, but I would always want you to check in with the counselor to make sure you're signed up for the right class if you're doing that particular class outside of Rochester High. All right. And then we also mentioned Visual Performing Applied Arts, or VPAA is what we call it for short. All students need to take 1 credit, at least 1 credit throughout their time at high school. And I would say, you know what, in general, a lot of times students, just by taking the courses they're interested in, they usually meet this requirement accidentally, which is great. You can have more than 1 credit, but the point is by the time of graduation, you have to have at least 1. So what are these classes that count? We actually have a lot that can be considered a VPAA credit. If you go to the registration booklet, you can see a list of all the courses. And just to try to make it easier for parents and families, we have a grid right here from the course registration brochure that shows you all the classes that can count. So it's not just typical art classes. There's a whole list of things, a whole slew of things that can count. Keep in mind, this is a list that encompasses all grade levels. So there could be some classes that can count, but students aren't eligible to take as freshmen. It might have to be later on in their high school career, which is fine, because remember, you still have time to get all these credits you have throughout high school to get the PE and the VPAA. Marching band and jazz band. So that would be box D on your scheduling card. Go ahead and you would check that box. The thing with this, just to keep in mind, because of the way Synergy is, students were asking them to input all their classes, but they're not able to add marching band or jazz band. That's okay. Make sure they mark it on their card, because the counselor will come back around and we will add that for them. Just keep in mind, first year marching band students are required to also schedule for concert band. After that, you don't have to take band during the school day. You can select marching band and not take the regular band class during the school day. And just also keep in mind, marching band can be used as a flex option for PE, 2 seasons of a sport, but you still have to take health. Now, also very important, box E, alternates. So of course, we want our students to get all their top picks, all the classes that they want to take, but sometimes they have to go into their alternates and take a backup class. Alternates are required. We want you to fill out all 4 lines, and please only enter courses you're willing to take. Remember, it's if someone's fixing your schedule, it's much better for us to see what it is that you were hoping for than us trying to guess and put you in classes you might like. And also keep in mind any prerequisites or teacher approval also apply to any alternate choices. We must have the alternates. We can't process your schedule without them. Now I'm going to hand it over to Mrs. Kenny.
Right. I'm going to briefly go over for your planning at each grade level, and then we'll circle back to talk about some of the options you'll have within that 4-year plan. So if you look at the screen, the 4-year plan, we'll start with 9th and 10th grade. You're going to see that most of it is going to be pretty prescribed, which is actually pretty helpful those first couple of years while you're still getting transitioned into high school. So if we look at 9th grade, everyone's going to take English, everyone's going to take math, science, and social studies. Obviously, we've talked through at length the differences in some of the options you'll have. We've just put what the typical course progression is. So LA9, Algebra 1, everyone will take physical science, world history. If you have not taken modern world language, 9th grade would be a suggested year for that. If the academic load will be appropriate for you. And then you can see there'd be space for 2 electives. In 10th grade, you move on again and LA10, geometry. If you have not taken biology, if you didn't opt to take that as an elective in 9th grade, you'd be taking biology as a 10th grader, and then US history. And each year when we schedule, we go over the options for the next year. So you hear all of the options within each of those subjects that will be available to you next year. Heading into 11th and 12th grade, you're going to see a lot more space open up. Everybody will still continue in English and math all 4 years. So you'll see in 11th grade, LA11, so you take a composition class and a literature class. Most students would be moved on to Algebra 2 or the algebra option that's split in between 2 years, government and economics. And then you're choosing a 3rd science that junior year if you haven't done so already. And then you've got multiple spaces for electives, potentially more if you doubled up on science earlier on. And then in 12th grade, you can see there's a whole bunch of choice available to you. You'd be taking your English and your math if you've done everything prior to that. And then kind of the world is yours in terms of electives and taking other special courses that you have really been looking forward to. We'll talk a little bit about how you might be able to fill all those spaces in just a moment. Okay, so you've heard us talk briefly about flex options. I'm going to rehash them again, just so they stay in the back of your minds. So one of the primary math flex options that we have is completing Algebra 2 over the course of 2 years. If you've gotten through Algebra 1 and geometry and you get to the point where the pace may be a struggle for you, everybody does need to achieve Algebra 2 before they graduate. But the way we have kind of accommodated students that maybe have been struggling up to that point is splitting Algebra 2 into 2 years. So it's Algebra 2A and then Algebra 2B. Algebra 2A covers semester 1 of Algebra 2 in a course of a year, and Algebra 2B covers Algebra 2 second semester over the course of a year. So it's just the same content, just at a slower pace. World language. We know the graduation requirement is 2 years of a world language. If, however, you're struggling in the language or you have other interests beyond a second year of world language, you can choose to flex out of that second year of world language with the additional VPAA credit. So you take 2 more classes towards VPAA credit in addition to the one that is already required for graduation. Health and PE was just briefly touched on, but you can complete 2 seasons of an MHSAA sport or 2 seasons of marching band, and that can count as your PE credit if you choose to flex out of it. Health, however, is not a flex option. So everybody will take health over the course of their high school career. And then science, everyone does need to take 3 years of science, but that 3rd year after biology and physical science, that 3rd year, it could be tailored to what your interests are in that moment. So you could take it a core science course. You could look at flexing out with computer programming, and then you can also look at CTE program options through OTEC, which we'll talk about in a moment. So there's lots of options. Okay, OTEC will become far more relevant when you're scheduling for 11th and 12th grade. It's helpful to know that it exists, and it's helpful to know what you can study while you're there. So as you're doing your 4-year plan, you can make sure that you're trying to meet your core curricular requirements or graduation requirements. So you have the flexibility to do OTEC later. So OTEC is a great option. Many of our Rochester High School students use this option in the junior and or senior year, where you'd spend 3 hours of your school day here at Rochester High, and then you'd spend 3 hours of your school day at the Oakland Technical Campus, whichever one houses your program. You can see the programs listed on the screen. We have everything from automotive technology to cosmetology, graphic and communications design, health sciences. It's a great way for students to meet some of their graduation requirements. So we talked about flexing out of that third science. OTEC also counts as VPA AA credits. It can count as your senior math credits. It can be the Swiss Army knife, essentially, of graduation when you're in 11th and 12th grade. But knowing it exists is helpful as you're trying to choose classes in 9th and 10th grade. So you can make sure that you're trying to make sure you get your health and your PE and your VPAA credits and anything else done, so you have more space in your schedule to consider options like this. We'll also have summer learning program. Some students choose to take a course or two in the summer learning program to create space in their schedule. And then twice a year, we're going to offer credit by exam, where students, if you have a deep level of knowledge in a certain subject and you'd like to try to get credit for that knowledge, you can always take an exam and try to get credit for that knowledge if you pass. So there's lots of ways to get credit. Academic success. Now this is a transition from 8th grade to 9th grade can be overwhelming at times. You might go into 9th grade trying to do the same things that you've always done, that you found success with in middle school, and only to find that maybe it's not sufficient. You might transition seamlessly as well. So our best advice is just to stay flexible. Obviously, there's some obvious things like go to class every single day, every single class period, and be prepared, be ready to learn, asking for help when you need it. Not waiting around for things to just magically improve, but really seeking out the help. Using a planner and writing things down. You're going to have 6 classes, things move very, very quickly. We think we're going to remember things, and we often don't. So just make sure that you're writing things down when needed. We'll have National Honor Society tutors available to you guys. You can always log into Student View and Parents and Parent View to kind of stay on top of coursework that may be missing, test quiz grades and things like that. Always use those teachers, communicate early and often. There's a difference between doing your homework and actually studying for quizzes and tests and things. And so use those first weeks to kind of develop some habits. Get yourself some sleep every night, eat some healthy food, take some time away from technology when it's available to you to do so. We also have some tools in Zello. So Zello is underutilized just for personal development. So you can take learning style surveys, you can take them again. So let's say you did it earlier in your life as a Rochester student, you can take it again to see if anything has changed for you, and then modify how you're approaching your schoolwork based on those results. We speak for all of our colleagues here in the counseling department that we value your whole life and your whole life balance, not just your academics. We know that those are important, but you only get to be in high school one time. And so we really desperately want you to find your people here at Rochester High School. So join clubs, go to homecoming, be a spectator, just take on this opportunity just to be a part of our community and just dive in. Find the people that reflect how you want to live your life in high school, how you want to approach your classes, and just branch out. Keep growing as a human being, refining your skills, being open to what your interests are, and really know that you have your own path. Your friends might go one way, you might go another, but really try to tune into your gut and what works for you, And we're all here anytime you need us to give guidance. Welcome. We're happy to have you.
Hello, everyone. Jennifer Otwil-Seka here. Just a couple of things to take a look at. Although your child is getting older, they still need your guidance for you to set boundaries, meet their friends, continue to have meals together. Naturally, teens will start to push you away, and it's tough to find that fine balance of teaching and guiding your child. They'll face greater success in the world later on in life through the lessons that you teach them now, of course. Allow them to work through the process of problem solving with you. Show them how to advocate for themselves with a teacher by helping them with the words, by writing an email, having them be the one at the keyboard, for example, but helping them through the process until they grow more independence within that task. Really have them start kind of growing some confidence and independence in some everyday tasks, such as scheduling a dental appointment or other tasks that require them to advocate for their needs, organize their time, etc. To stay connected to school, please read the Falcon Flyer for monthly newsletters. We have a counseling newsletter and career newsletters as well. Consider joining the PTSA and then connect with teachers through email and conferences. It is common practice for a parent and student to email the teacher if needed. This definitely is a skill that your student can learn with your support until they're independent in that task. And of course, reach out when needed. We understand that it takes a village. When really focusing, we want your child by all means, and our emphasis to be on their next step into high school. And we don't want to push them too far forward beyond what that looks like. But within high school, we'll focus on career exploration and awareness. And then we'll begin to focus on what post-high school training meets their interest, helping kids really find their best fit career pathway. We'll use tools, one that Ms. Kinney referenced, it's called Zello. We have AchieveWorks, Nepris, and other career resources that we'll use with your student. Educational development plans are done every school year. Easy access to that is right on the student's Chromebook, RCS Chromebook under bookmarks, and they can explore that anytime they'd like. It's actually on their Chromebooks now. Career exploration is really integrated into the curriculum where we tap into field trips, community speakers, resumes are done in junior year. Some career fairs here and there at the county level. We have Oakland Schools Technical Campus, family connections through the Career Monthly newsletter. Our community focus really for some time has been focused on that particular college or that four-year degree. And we know full well that we need to widen our focus to help our students get to know themselves, have awareness of the many post-high school training options, and finding that best fit training for them. We want our students to understand they have options, that they must do some sort of training after high school, and that the expectation is for them to complete a credential or a degree. Again, whatever is the best fit for them. Our kids can find success in many different options. We always want to work from their strengths. Sometimes I think kids have really detached from knowing who they are. So have conversations about what they really used to enjoy as a small child. What did they play with? What were they curious about? Point out to them when you notice them being curious about something or really working hard on a specific task, and celebrate really those successes. Sometimes, again, our teens need help identifying that within themselves, and as many adults that can help point out those really big strengths for them that they could use later on in a career later on for success in life is always helpful. These are some quick examples of post-high school education. There's certificate programs. There are trades and apprenticeship programs, associates, bachelor's degrees, military programs. Lots of options after high school for your child to find the best fit training and have great success. This is just some basic information that we simply bring awareness to of job opportunities based on demand. This is information taken from Michigan's Hot 50 Job Outlook. And again, just to reiterate, high school is an incredible time for our kids to explore, build skills, connect with new people, have lots of fun, and become stronger with all of our support and guidance along the way. Our support your support, we're all part of the same village and helping really these kids get to know who they are and have great success lifelong.
Thanks, Ms. O'Toole. That was a lot of really great information. So we're going to head back to the schedule card, and we're going to ask your students to input their classes into Student View. So once you get into Student View, there's going to be a tab that will say Course Requests. Your student is going to click that tab and input all of their classes into Student View. We did include some helpful videos on our Google Classroom and on our counseling webpage. So if at some point your student or your family gets confused on how to input those classes, we are going to, or we did provide some videos on our Google Classroom and counseling webpage as a resource. Some other things to keep in mind after you put in those classes, again, you want to make sure that you include both semesters. The courses should add up to 6 credits or 12 semesters worth of classes. It's important that you as a parent go over these classes and sign your student's scheduling card so that is our indication that you've seen their choices and you approve of the classes that they decide to take. After your student inputs their classes into Student View, we're going to ask that you print that list of classes and staple it to the schedule card. That's going to be one of the other resources that we're going to use to just kind of double check what's on your student's card with what was input into the computer. So both things are going to be required when your student turns in that scheduling card to their middle school counselor, the printout as well as the card. And counselors are going to be going back to the middle schools during their lunch periods to answer any questions that they may have. So if there are some last minute questions before your student turns in their scheduling card, we will be visiting the middle schools again during lunch. And then again, just to remember to add both semesters as you're going through and inputting those classes into Student View. We're going to ask that you stay connected. We've developed a Google Classroom for all of our incoming 9th graders. So a lot of this information will be in that Google Classroom. Your student just has to accept that invitation and then they can access all of those resources.
Thank you all counselors for those great presentations. Parents, if you have any questions after viewing this presentation, you can contact your student's counselor using our webpage. There's a button that says Contact Us, and that will help you to get to your correct counselor. Of course, you can also find most of the information we presented today on that website, and we look forward to seeing all of your future Falcons here at Rochester. Thank you for watching our video and have a wonderful rest of your evening.